Whew. Oh, those commissions really took me down deep. But I finally clawed my way back out, and I can get back to what I want to do, which is to welcome you all back to the Pantheon of Sandbox. This is the series where I detail the gods that oversee my original world. Today's episode is actually the penultimate. We're almost done. And given life has been just utterly and unforgivably insane lately, I'm gonna take it easy by only doing 2 new goddesses for this episode, and a little bit more, but we'll get to that. Don't worry, I still got plenty to yap about, so let's not delay my autism any longer! It hungers for mythology! You know what's funny? I initially didn't want a destruction deity. I've stated I don't want drama in my pantheon because that's not the story I want to tell with this world, and so have omitted any of the troublemaking deities and outright evil domains from joining, which in hindsight is such limited thinking. Destruction doesn't need to be inherently evil or world-ending. Given I spent 2 episodes in a row in this series complaining about how Death Domain does not equal Satan, it was a little hypocritical of me, not gonna lie. One day my buddy Narfi tells me he's surprised Sekhmet wasn't put in given she's a canonical brick house cat girl. I told him it's because I already had a god of war chosen, but upon Google searching I learned she's not a war god like I thought she was, and is actually a goddess of healing and destruction. And I was like, what a cool contrasting combo! I had to have it! Surprise twist though, I'm not going for Sekhmet. She inspired the desired domain, but my boyfriend suggested a much more interesting choice. This is Ishtar, of Mesopotamian/Babylonian mythology. She was goddess of fertility, love, politics, and war. She was known as the Queen of Heaven, and wielded the Mez, the representation of all positive and negative aspects of civilization. She's an extremely important goddess who has a lot of very conflicting yet balanced domains to her name. That's why I felt she was a good pick for the healing and destruction domain. Her original domains were already contrasting like that, and each side of things felt like they could easily transition into the domains I wanted. She could have easily been the head of the Pantheon and thus goddess of balance if I didn't like the idea of Typhon ascending a lot more. Also, I didn't know about her when I was playing this project anyway. On top of being gifted the concept of civilization by the god of wisdom Enki, most of her stories involve taking over the domains and duties of other deities, and along with her brother Utu, she was the enforcer of divine justice. Something that comes to mind is Dragon Ball of all things, though given half the domain I'm giving her, you probably aren't surprised it's being brought up. In the Dragon Ball Omniverse, a god of destruction's job is to destroy anything that poses a threat to the development and well-being of their given universe. Essentially quality control admins, banning the really bad stuff to keep their server balanced. Given Ishtar reads as someone very responsible and takes great pride in being law enforcement, I think giving her a similar role makes a lot of sense. However, the finer details of her notable stories also paint another similarity to a very specific god of destruction, that being my beloved Bingus bitch himself, Beerus. As a goddess with a lot of authority, you damn well know she was gonna be flawed as per industry standard. Her most notable tales summarized as follows. Only gained her temples and domains through conquering those she felt aren't doing a good enough job or just wanted them. A gardener violates her in her sleep, so instead of just hunting him down normally, she causes storms and plagues across the land to weed him out. Turns a bandit woman into a water skin for murdering her husband when murder would have been sufficient enough punishment. She sent the Bull of Heaven down to kill Gilgamesh's best bro just cause he refused to be her concubine. Oh yeah, and that one time a mountain pissed her off cause it was more glorious than her in its natural beauty, so declared it to defy her authority and thus annihilated it. Fucking amazing. You may be thinking this goes against my wants for an unproblematic squad, but you gotta understand, I fucking love Beerus a lot. I was worried she was going to be a plain fuddy-duddy character, but this selfishness and pettiness is honestly endearing. This is the same reason I loved Isis from last episode and why I love Sun Wukong enough to put him in the Pantheon as well. I love characters that are good guys but are also utter bastards. And that's pretty much what some of the best mythological figures are like anyway. Besides, most of her crash outs were either justified or entertaining. Except the Gilgamesh bit, that's really fucked up. But still, I think the lesson about flawed heroes and or forces of nature is clear enough, maybe, I don't know. Let's just establish her in this universe already. As the goddess of healing and destruction, Ishtar embodies and influences the natural cycle of mending and breaking. Her healing strikes are able to fix up anything, from curing pains and illnesses to patching up fractured bits of reality. In turn, her destructive strikes are able to destroy anything, from simply smashing a target into a few pieces to fully atomizing them out of existence. These powers make her the best enforcer of cosmic justice the Sandboxian crew could ask for. From paradoxes in the timeline to eldritches getting too comfy in reality. From villains that won't stay dead to the stray black hole. Anything that defies the gods and can't be solved by the rest of them is up to Ishtar to solve, regardless of if it needs to be fixed or erased. She takes immense pride in her role, yet has an immense ego as a result. She loves to help the others, even with relatively smaller scaled things compared to what she's capable of, but will also expect to be praised and allowed to take whatever she wants, even from the mortal realm, in the moment as reward. She outbrats Sun Wukong, yet is just as reliable as Typhon and Echidna. For her design, I basically copied Contrast Hero Chaos from Yu-Gi-Oh! Look, I heard the contrast domain concept and immediately and autistically just never let go of the inspiration. But hey, the Kamen Rider style kinda fits her very justice-aligned character, so it worked out. Plus, come on, something tokusatsu was gonna appear in this world eventually. Y'all should know me by now. By the way, episode 2 of The Savage is out of hiatus by the time this video is out, so you should totally read it. Please! I wanted a motif of X's and O's, like the O's are healing halos and the X's are Xing out whatever needs to be gone. It does have the hilarious effect of making her look like the god of tic-tac-toe. Like, she's ascended for being the only person to actually win at it. I initially did blue O's and red X's with gold accents, but settled on gold O's and purple X's with a gray accent instead. The gold and white made the healing side fittingly angelic, especially given her old Queen of Heaven title. The perfect contrast to that had to be black and purple, which I was happy about for obvious reasons, but bias aside, the colors just ended up super clean. Also, I made this funny palette. I know, it looks crazy, huh? It's really killer on the eyes. Seeing I made this, you probs thought I had a one side fixes, the other explodes. The JoJokes write themselves! In all seriousness, Ishtar not only came out to be one of the coolest designs of the Pantheon, but also one of my favorites in general, too. Now that badass design is out of the way, let's get to, hey, wait a minute. If you really want a god of destruction and healing, why not go with Shiva from Hindu mythology? They're canonically that domain, without needing any changes like you did with Ishtar. Hell, a viewer even suggested Shiva to you. Why didn't you go for it? Yeah, I guess when you push something to the back of your mind, it goes to your back mind. Let's take a detour. There is something I want to address before we get into the next design. With this project, I aim to appreciate instead of appropriate. Yes, I take creative liberties, but only after I've done my research to understand the concepts of these gods and their purpose to their original cultures. I want to be as respectful as possible, which naturally led to me learning about what cultures aren't okay with adaptations. The ones I adapt from are primarily dead ones where there's nobody to offend, or ones that, while active, are pretty chill about this kind of stuff so long as you aren't mocking them. But the real off-limits ones are the living religions. Christianity, Judaism, Islam, Buddhism, the indigenous tribes of North America and Aboriginal Australia, and the one I get the most suggestions about, Hinduism. I completely understand why. Hindu stories are awesome. I'm super flattered that people are inspired by my series so much they want to suggest stuff they think is awesome to add to the awesomeness of my world. But I want to respect the wishes of cultures who don't want their beliefs to be treated like just any other public domain story or a monster manual to cherry pick stuff from. I hope y'all understand my ethos on why I'm not adapting certain myths. I would never intentionally try to offend other cultures just to have cool gods in my world. That said, Gaia needs an emergency lore update. While I was planning this episode, I had realized an oopsie I made all the way back in episode 2. I had stated that Gaia was the only nature deity from the old world, that it didn't make sense to have multiple Earth gods when there is just one Earth, so every other deity from every other culture were all just interpretations of the true Mother Nature that was my OC. This goes against my entire ethos. Every other god, including Tiamat, from the same fucking video, had lore that either implied or directly said that they weren't the only god of their domain, and that the rest of our world's deities exist, just not present in this universe anymore. But for some reason, Gaia's the one exception who says no other nature deity exists, and that they are all just her? It's an even bigger yikes considering I had explicitly stated her design was inspired by a major figure in an indigenous tribe's beliefs, which accidentally implied her and plenty of other similar figures from other tribes don't exist as dictated by a white guy's world building. I know nobody noticed this big yikes, TM, except for me 2 years later, and I'm probably the only one who actually cares. But I'm still kinda upset with myself for such hypocrisy happening at all, so before I get any closer to completing this project, I'm gonna take another retcon interlude, TM, to fix it. Obviously, the first thing is to canonize that Gaia is not everyone that embodies nature. This is strictly the Gaia of Greek myth, the primordial representation of the Earth itself. We're still keeping her design the same with the spider body though. She was never meant to be Spider Grandmother herself, simply inspired by the concept of a spider-themed nature goddess, so no need to fully redesign her, thank the gods. As mentioned, she is a primordial, a divinity that is a bit above a typical god as they were created by concepts conceived at the world or universe's creation. I imagine they are stronger and less reliant on worship as gods since the concepts they embody are before humanity existed. You probably think that amount of power in being the very concept of nature itself is why she was chosen for the nature goddess of Sandbox. Well, you're half right. The Eldritch Flood had fucked up Earth, and a lot of reality, destroying the environment in incomprehensible pollution. Imagine being immortal, but stuck within a planet-wide nuclear fallout. That was the type of suffering nature gods across the world had to be in as their domains and thus divinities were no more. The only way to get back to divinity was to win the tournament, which was impossible for any of them in their states. Gaia was mostly fine. She was the Earth primordial, so as long as the planet itself was still there, she was too. But the Earth was still damaged and even warped a little, making Gaia only half as strong as she normally was, meaning she wouldn't last long in the tournament. There was only one natural course of action she could do: survival of the fittest. She took the form of a spider as it was the most successful predator to have what she needed for this hunt: skills in ensnaring and absorption. She consumed all the other nature gods. I said I would make all the nature gods canon. I didn't say anything about them surviving. I know this sounds super fucked up and maybe even a little contradictory to the original problem, but this was the only thing that really made sense to me given the rest of the lore and how I personally view the concept of nature. Nature is equal parts beautiful and brutal. Every aspect of it has the sole purpose of survival. There was no malice in Gaia's hunt, only a need to keep living. And considering how much the rest had been suffering from the flood, this was ultimately a mercy. Their essences, including their very memories and souls, are now one with Gaia's own, empowering her to thrive. They return to the Earth they came from, both metaphorically and literally, as all things naturally do. Gaia is no longer chosen as Sandbox's Mother Nature because she was written as the only option. She was chosen because she was the only option who was able to persist despite everything. No matter what disastrous impacts occur, nature will adapt, survive, and thrive. That is the true strength of nature that Gaia embodied, even if it meant being forced to be the last one standing. Now Sandbox has her webbing, imbued with her survivor's strength, connecting all of its nature Oh, right. Well, she was okay because she was in the underworld while the flood and tournament happened. She did get kinda ill from the mass loss of animal life, but she stayed divine as there were plenty of mythical beasts still around, including Serby, who never left her side during recovery. Isn't that cute? One last thing while we have her on topic. I think Persephone and Quetzalcoatl would be initially bummed that, Typhon's mom slurped up their moms, but I think they'd accept her as their new mom over time. Gaia, despite this more brutal update, is still just as motherly as she initially was in episode 2. She has the memories of those she absorbed, but even without them, I think she'd still be super caring for Percy and Q and the rest of the Pantheon. She did what she had to survive, but that doesn't mean she's a complete remorseless monster. Again, nature is both loving and horrifying, but it's good for us either way. Also, side note, I'm retconning one last bit. Anansi is no longer a child of Gaia. Just cause there are 2 spiders in the Pantheon doesn't mean they need to be blood related. That was just a really unnecessary connection that had no basis, and kinda specious too. So, sorry to the Drider community, I guess? Alright, now that I've taken care of those loose ends, I feel better about moving on to our next DV. Hello, presumed
a child.
This content you are trying to enjoy has some implied naughty topics like sex positivity and
fucking pronouns!
And judging by your history of
Pokemon, Minecraft,
and
mascot horror
videos, our system guesstimates you are not age appropriate and have been justly from it for your own safety. Fuck, I forgot about this stupid shit. Language, young man. If you wish to continue this content, you will need to confirm your age by scanning in your face or
identification.
Oh yeah, I'm totally gonna give you my private information. In fact, prep the face scan right now, please. Certainly! Facial scan in 5, Ishi! 4, 3, 2, 1. Well, sir, we apologize for the mix-up. From our scans, you are clearly very mature. We guesstimate by your features you must be at least over 50. Thank you, Ishi. I owe you one. Man, this bit's gonna age like milk if they ever decide to stop implementing this garbage. Call your reps about invasive censorship. Anyway, where was I? Oh yeah, let's talk about hell. After introducing Hades and his family, it's safe to say we have an established Sandboxian afterlife. But the underworld is only one layer of it. And saying layer after mentioning hell should be an extra thick clue. I said I respected people's beliefs enough to not adapt anything from the Bible, but the much more fun fanfics that were inspired by it are unproblematically free game. From Dante's Inferno, the Divine Comedy, the Ars Goetia, and the Splash of Paradise Lost, I find these works' version of heaven and hell to be a lot more interesting than any of the canon in the Bible, creatively speaking. I know it's a very overdone source in fiction writing, it's everywhere, but that doesn't mean I still don't like it, and thus I want it in my world. Why is knowing the type of hell I'm doing important to the next god I'm drawing? It's cause that's where she comes from. It's time for the lore of sin. While heaven was for those who both lived good-hearted lives and also worshipped the gods lots to end up after death, the 8 circles of hell were made for everyone else. Souls who lived evil lives were damned and doomed to be tortured by demons for all eternity. But those who were the average person, the ones who weren't assholes but weren't pure either, were reborn as said demons, given a new lease on life to indulge in their sins, affectionate, e.g. gluttony, lust, pride, etc., while also punishing bad people for their sins, derogatory, e.g. murder, theft, racism, etc. Speaking of, an original demon had to be made to start the cycle of demonic reincarnation, and so we have Sin, the mother of hell, a title named so as she gave birth to the first generation of demons, and the first 7 being her princes who governed their respective circles. Fun fact! This video, before I came up with Ishtar, was gonna be about Sin and the 7 Deadly Princes, but I didn't want to draw 8 fucking designs in one video, so we're gonna save the 7 fuckers for a bonus video sometime in the future. Also, fun fact, Sin's snake body and Mother of Demons stuff are inspired by their lore from Paradise Lost, which I refuse to detail as it's horrific, even for me. So we're just gonna cherry pick Lamia that births demons and leave it at that. Sandbox's Sin is the embodiment of people's desires, what they want to make themselves feel good, like companionship, sexual and friendship-wise, more food than they need, more money and other shiny things. All that is indulgence and pleasure. Desires are what make us people. It's what drives us to find happiness and fulfillment in our lives. It's not evil to want something that feels good, physically or emotionally. And by proxy, Sin is not evil. He is happy to give new demonic life to those who simply live their lives to the end, following their desires. He and his demons punish those who don't deserve his motherhood, the damned, because they use desire as an excuse to do horrible things that hurt others. Desire should be a reason to live, not a tool for evil. The system of hell ran like a well-lubed machine. Reincarnating souls became normal for the reproductive biology of all demonkind, allowing Sin plenty of breaks from the brood-parent responsibility to enjoy the pleasures and torturings of which of their prince's circles they wanted to indulge in for that century. Afterlife was chill. Until the war! The 20-year war between humankind and monsterfolk had successfully overloaded the underworld and hell with the amount of deaths happening. And in a twist none of you should be surprised to hear, it's the gods' fault. When deciding who should be a part of the Pantheon after winning the tournament, Typhon skipped all the love and adjacent domains, because he believed all living things have the capacity for compassion by nature, and so a whole god for that wasn't necessary. I mean, he and Echidna were still in love, and they certainly weren't in the gods' favor before the tournament, given the canon of Greeks. This was a massive mistake made, because, well, let's take a look at who they did approve. Thor, even before being made god of war, loved a good battle. Sun Wukong, self-appointed god of glory, who was a prideful chaos gremlin. Ishtar, whose destruction half covered wars and believed in extreme justice as the correct answer to almost anything. Melinoe, goddess of fear, who doesn't care what your fear is so long as you are scared, even if it's xenophobia. Gaia, Mother Nature, and Persephone, goddess of beasts, who both embody the fight or flight response of all living things. And the fucking Morrigan, who has had a history of inciting wars for fated reasons. These influences, whether intentional or not in terms of the war happening, were accidentally numerous, not helped by that natural compassion Typhon put faith in, only extending to a mortal's own tribe, family, and species. War waging over the dominance of the other race was inevitable thanks to divine oversight. Can't have a fantasy world without fantasy racism at one point. By the 15th year of the war, the population of sentient life, the ones that provided the Pantheon their much-needed worship, had begun to noticeably decline. According to the Time God, who we will detail in the final episode, if this keeps up into the 21st year, it'll be a full-scale extinction event for all sentient species. Their people will kill themselves if this mistake isn't fixed soon. Typhon already knew the solution was to reverse his blunder, and find someone to ascend into a love god or equivalent, to get a new influence going as soon as possible. They couldn't exactly get any previous love gods. After all, this is long after the tournament was over, so any gods that weren't part of the Pantheon are already out of this universe, in one way or another. After a short search by Isis's magics, Anansi and Fort's records, Chang'e's scanners, and the Time God rewinding the timeline replay, they found the only being that was already close to a god and embodied what they needed, Sin. Fun fact! While writing the script, it occurred to me that Ladon, Typhon, and Echidna's New World son would have been a perfect love god given his Jesus coding. But I like what I'm doing with Sin, so I'm sticking with it. Comment below what you think the reason to exclude Ladon from the candidates would be. Anyway, back to the lore. Sin was offered ascension into official godhood. He would do it on one condition. The war had made hell crowded, both with damned souls and new demons. She'll ascend if it means the gates of hell stay open on the surface world, allowing demon kind to go in and out as they please. Sin just wanted their people in comfort, and it was an issue caused by the gods, so it was a fair deal so long as damned souls were still trapped. Despite Sin being the canonically most recent god added, they were extremely impactful. Their domain of desires resonated. Everyone fighting started to feel this desire deep down take seed that would grow and grow as the conflict kept going and going, breaking through the feelings of hatred and glory day by day until a universal desire finally bloomed. I want to live. By the 20th year, both sides got bored of the constant fighting, yada yada, it ends in a truce, yada yada, the sentient population avoids extinction. We'll save the finer details of the war and its aftermath another time. And also the second war. But, point is, desires are a major part of living, and it was better late than never to divine it. The day of Sin's ascension also became the date for a worldwide holiday called Hearts Day, which is basically a combo of Valentine's, Friendsgiving, and Pride. Just a celebration of love in all its forms that eventually turned into a whole week-long thing. Suffice to say, this world is doing better with a good influence that helps incite the pursuit of happiness and free love, which is gonna be needed to get those population numbers back up after all that bullshit. Sin is a very impulsive and hedonistic being. Gaia is the doting and emotionally strong mother figure, Echidna is the responsible and resourceful one, and Sin is the wine aunt, who enables any fun ideas herself, her followers, and her fellow gods come up with, even if it's not the best idea. Very supporting and accepting, to a very silly degree sometimes. Despite this, he does pull its weight as her hellfire is extremely powerful, able to burn eldritch flesh just as well as Typhon himself. What, you thought Z was gonna use the power to make others fall in love and or get mind-meltingly horny on the Eldritch? Don't be silly, that's only for her most devout mortals. Sin's primary inspiration was actually Slanesh from Warhammer 40k, but basically if you made it a positive force instead of Cenobites. It was also slightly based on Lust from Darksiders 3, who is shockingly non-sexualized and focused on lust being about one's desire rather than just sex. I wanted a god of love that wasn't solely sexual, but didn't shy away from it. Invoke nuance to what the concept represented, but also embrace the horny aspect just as much, kinda like what I did with the new Gaia update, wanting to have the traditional aspects of the concept while also expanding and updating upon it. Yet another fun fact! You may have noticed I kept switching up pronouns in the script. That's cause Sin is my first ever gender fluid character! I wanted to do this androgynous yet still voluptuous design for them. Are these pecs or boobs? Their answer is whatever you want, babe. This body type really emphasized their indulgent nature and how desires for anyone regardless of identity, deviating from the typical cis goddess expected of such a domain as a subversive cherry on top. I had actually pre-doodled some bits based on my ref pile since I was nervous I wouldn't be able to convey what I wanted, and a non-cis friend told me I nailed it first try, so super proud of that! For everything else about Sin's design, I wanted to incorporate a Lamia build based on both Sin's description in Paradise Lost, and how snakes are an icon of human sin and hell-related stuff in biblical lore. Add in a few goat aspects, cause Satanism, some tentacle hair and a womb tack to embody some spicier imagery that her domain totally fights the censorship of, and some pairs of bat wings to reference everybody's favorite cameo succubus, Morrigan Einzelin from Darkstalkers. And I gave her Valentine's Day colors, cause that just fit. The most difficult part of the design was figuring out the patterns, but eventually I found a good thematic one to do. Originally I was going to do like a bioluminescent blacklight version, but I'll save that for another time I think. But yeah, I'm satisfied with Sin overall. They came out exactly how I wanted, and it just feels nice to give my world such a positive spin on a domain that often gets portrayed as toxic, one note, or both. Just cause our world has a lot of negativity regarding this stuff doesn't mean mine should, you know? And that's it! I am very happy with both these new horned ladies joining my pantheon. And yes, that's why the title is punned like that. I could not think of anything better for this video at all. I hope you all like the new lore for a setting of a comic that won't be ready for publishing for another few years at minimum. No, but for real, I hope you all enjoyed this, and will subscribe to not miss out on the next episode, where I'll be drawing up the final 3 gods left of the Sandboxian Pantheon. Until then, whenever that is, I hope you all have a good one!
No, God! No, God, please, no! No! No!